A week or two ago, I had on a guest. I think we had him on radio as well as TV. Yeah. What was his name? Sebastian Junger? Yeah, thank you. Who wrote a book called Tribes, and it's just an absolutely brilliant book about how his experience in the military was that, or maybe it wasn't even his experience, maybe it was, yeah, in fact it wasn't. He was a reporter. He was embedded with the military. But his experience was that there was a sense of mission and cohesion, and we're all in this together, and we completely depend upon each other, and I've got your back and you got my back, and whether you like this war or not, whether you think that the politicians who lied us into it are stupid or not, no matter what, we're here. We're a tribe. And it got me thinking this morning about a story that I opened my book Screwed with, which is the story of my dad, and how my dad worked for 30-plus years at a tool and die shop in Lansing, Michigan. In fact, it was called Lansing Tool and Die. And it still is. It's the best of my knowledge. And my dad mostly ran the office, as it were. There was an absentee owner. This was a little tool and die shop. It had 13 or 18, 16 employees, something like that. It was a small number of people. I used to go there when I was a little kid all the time after school, play with the steel and the asbestos, and watch the guys with these giant machines, the Blanchard, the mills, when they were milling, what's that metal that is that catches on fire, that burns so incredibly hot. It's not titanium, but or tungsten. But in any case, they just did such cool stuff there. And when my dad's retirement came, he continued to go to work. Now, somebody else was doing the bookkeeping, and he would fill in running the machines too when necessary. But he had become basically the bookkeeper for the company, and the office manager, and the salesman. He just kind of did everything except run the machines, and when necessary, he ran the machines. He knew how to run all of them, or most of them. But he kept going back to work. And it wasn't that he didn't want to hang out with my mom. He loved my mom. It wasn't that he didn't want to see my younger brothers. I was out of the house by then, and I think probably by the time he retired, even my youngest brother was long gone. It was that he missed his friends. The guys that he worked with were his tribe. And, every morning at 10 o'clock or 10:15, they'd have a 15 or 20-minute or 30-minute coffee break, and they'd sit and play pinochle and smoke cigarettes and drink coffee. And then every day they'd have their lunch hour, and they all brought lunch from home, and they'd sit there around the table and they'd play pinochle and smoke their cigarettes and talk. And, around 3, they had another coffee break, and then they went home at 5. And Dad would go down there after he retired. He'd go down there in time to get there for the 10 o'clock coffee break, and then he'd kind of hang around and help out and do what he could between 10:30 and noon, and then he'd have lunch with them, and then he'd come home after lunch. Because he missed his tribe. It used to be in America that when we were essentially a manufacturing economy and an agricultural economy, because the tribe was true for farmers too. Farming communities, everybody knew everybody. The Grange was, the center of the community, the small towns, the small schools, the churches. Everybody knew everybody. It was tribe. Just like in the factories, people who worked together, not only, hey, I work beside you so I get to know you, but there was, this work at will stuff. Anybody can be fired anytime for any reason, just, because the boss decides that, he wants to add another $50,000 to his paycheck. That pretty much did not exist 30 years ago, 40 years ago when my dad retired, or however many years ago it was. It wasn't even that long ago. It was 20 years ago. And now that sense of tribe has been shattered in large part, and not just in the United States, but also in the United Kingdom, by what I was referring to yesterday and the day before as neoliberalism, what I would also call Reaganomics, Thatchernomics, modern economic theory. People are losing their tribes. So now it's like, it's the gig economy. Hey, I'm gonna drive a car for a while. I'm gonna rent my house out. No tribe there. I'm going to, I'm going to work part-time at McDonald's and part-time at Burger King. No tribe there. I'm going to work at Walmart, but they keep, they change the shifts around. There's no ability to develop tribe because the employers don't want there to be tribe, because then you'll end up with what was the situation at my dad's tool and die shop, which was every single one of those guys was a member of the Machinists Union. And oh my God, if you've got people who think that they're going to work in the same place for 30 years, make a good living, and retire with a pension, that means that they've got a union. And neoliberalism hates unions. Neoliberalism was designed in large part to break up unions and lower wages, move money from the bottom to the top, thin out the middle class, the working class, put them in their place, a phrase frequently used back in the 70s and 80s. And to make business more profitable by buying off politicians so that they would, quote, deregulate. In other words, make it so that, your favorite paper company or oil refinery can dump more poison into the air and water and thus make more profit. That's what neoliberalism is all about, and the result is that it's just destroying these tribes. Jonathan Ernst was writing over at Reuters yesterday, and he made the note, he's talking about these free trade deals, which are neoliberalism on steroids. They are the definition of neoliberalism. And he said, in 2011, President Obama claimed that the Korean-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, KORUS, would support this is a quote from the president, would support 70,000 American jobs because the government would increase exports of American goods by $10 to $11 billion. Sounds nice. I'd vote for that, right? But, writes Jonathan Ernst, since KORUS took effect in 2012, exports to Korea have increased by less than $1 billion. They have increased. Meanwhile, U.S. imports, in other words, the stuff that Korea is selling us, has increased by more than $12 billion, resulting in a net loss of 75,000 U.S. jobs. And presumably the creation of a couple 100,000 much lower paying jobs in South Korea. He says, similarly, Bill Clinton claimed that NAFTA would create 200,000 jobs in its first 2 years and 1 million jobs in 5 years. Instead, between 1993 and 2013, the U.S. trade deficit, 93 was just before NAFTA. In 2013, the U.S. trade deficit with Mexico and Canada increased from $17 billion to $177 billion, displacing more than 850,000 jobs. I'd say is well over 1 million. Free trade is a scam. It's a neoliberal scam. And similarly, the European Union. There's a great tweet this morning. I don't know who to attribute this to. It's the twymg.com domain. But it says it wasn't the EU that privatized your British gas. This is to the British people. It wasn't the EU that privatized your British telecom, that sold off your power stations, that privatized your British mail, that privatized your Royal Mail, that privatized your water industry, that shut down UK's coal industry, that smashed your trade unions, that sold off British steel. No, it was the conservative neoliberal government.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Neoliberalism and Thatcherism and Reaganomics are all the same thing. The list goes on, by the way. I'll share more after the break with you.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.